Okay, hello everyone. My name is Krista from 123 Sign Up, and I'd like to thank you all for joining our webinar today, Running Your First Large Conference. With us today are presenters from Association Planners of Georgia, Junia Blackburn and Ken Hall. APG runs over 300 successful events annually, and that includes conferences, conventions, corporate meetings, galas, and golf tournaments. They also manage over 18 nonprofit associations, so we're really excited to have them share their knowledge and experience with us. Sheila Hall from Insight Analytique also joins us. She works with organizations on integrating and understanding their data so they can take effective and actionable steps for their businesses. Throughout the presentation, we encourage you to submit questions in the box just next to the slideshow on your screen. At the end of the presentation, our speakers will answer as many questions as they can, but if they don't get to yours, they'll respond to you via email after the webinar. So do make sure to include your email address when you're actually submitting the questions. That's all from me, so without further delay, I'll hand it over to Sheila to start the presentation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our discussion on running your first large conference. I'm Sheila Hall with Insight Analytique, and we're so glad to have Ken Hall, no relation, and Junia Blackburn of Associated Planners of Georgia here with us today. APG's experience involves planning and executing over 3,000 successful events.
Hi, everyone. This is Ken. I'm Director of Operations for APG, and I direct their daily and event operations.
Hello, everyone. I'm Junia, and I'm the Director of Special Events at APG, and I work directly with our clients, executive directors, board members, and district planning committees to help execute their large and small special events from beginning to end.
Now, we're sure you'll find valuable, actionable information whether you are just beginning to plan your conference or whether your event is coming up soon. We have so much prepared to go over today in our short time together, but we promise that before the question and answer section at the end, we will tell you how to find out more. As Krista noted, please feel free to send along your questions after each topic by entering them into the box you can see on your device next to the slide presentation. So hopefully you've clicked on the slide presentation link, and in the box next to it you should see the place to enter your questions. Our folks here will keep track of those and will answer as many as time allows in the Q&A section, so be sure to stay tuned. Now for the topic at hand, running your first large conference. It has serious overruns in budget, issues that pop up that you just didn't know about, disgruntled participants, or you can glean the inside knowledge of experienced conference planners and come out with the information that will guide you through a well-planned, successful event. Now today we'll go over initial planning, conference agenda and conference room speakers, attendee registration and tracking, and budgeting and sponsorship benefits. First things first, let's talk about your initial planning. You'll need to give yourself enough of a runway, so planning should begin at ideally 1 year out, but a minimum of 6 months out. Junia, let us know about developing milestones.
Sure, Sheila. So we work with our clients to develop milestones by organizing all the conference to-do items. Think of your milestones as a multi-page, trackable, highly developed to-do list that will guide your conference planning throughout the entire process. You want to include categories such as logistics, marketing, programs, sponsorship, and any other large chunk. If you'll take a look at the slides, if you have the slides up, the column that is labeled area, this is what I'm referring to as far as the categories. As you see, you have the different types of categories, and there are more that also would be represented here. Another one might be something as far as speakers. That might be one. If you have a special side event, you may have an area there as well. Your categories, you'll probably notice, may also sometimes mimic your actual committee titles. So that also helps tracking with your separate subcommittees. Your marketing committee will usually deal with those items that are listed under the marketing area. You'll then break down those tasks into smaller tasks and add target dates for each. If you take a look at the milestones slide again, you'll see we have a due date column. This is where you can add very helpful due dates for when tasks should be completed, your target dates for completion, and this can also be deadline dates if something is due to the venue. Something has to be turned in somewhere, maybe a contract has to be turned in. You can track the date here, and this will help you stay online and making sure that you're meeting all of your needed hard deadlines. Then you'll see we have a description column. This is where the details of what exactly the task specifically is and what's entailed. And then in the notes column, this is kind of if you think about where you would add maybe action items or follow-up notes. This way you'll always have a constant track of what your progress is, what is happening, and when things are going on, the more detailed notes as far as what is taking place in relation to the description. The next column you'll see is the owner tab. This column lists who is responsible for completing the task. As you see, we have APG or client listed here. You can also be a little bit more detailed. You can list a specific person. So if there's maybe a committee chair who has a role in this task, you can add them there. Maybe this may be an outside person. You can actually assign ownership for that task in this column. The final column you'll see is the status column. This also helps you track when things are completed. So as you see all these tasks have been completed, there's one that's in progress. You can also add those notes as well if things are still going on, and something's an ongoing task that doesn't really have a hard deadline and will continue month after month. You would add this here as well. And you can also add, you see there's an A note, not applicable. Some items may not be applicable to your conference this year, but you still want to keep them in the milestone so that way in future years it's a task that is not overlooked. The row that you see that is orange is actually where you will list the month. So, for instance, if this event was taking place several months in the future, you will be able to see that this is the month where this item, these tasks will be completed. You'll want to leave columns and other notes and areas to keep adding updates, and you'll want to check this at least bi-weekly for any red flags. Another note, this is something that we find to be very popular, very successful with our clients, is using your milestones to actually guide your committee meeting. This can either take the place of your meeting agenda or work in tandem with your agenda to make sure all the actions and tasks are being completed in a timely manner.
Great, thank you. Now, Ken, what about developing and assigning responsibilities to your team? Some who joined us today may be working with larger groups of staff or volunteers than what they have been used to with their previous events.
Well, first of all, you want to recruit a multi-layered team. I highly suggest including 2 conference co-chairs or a chair and co-chair, and that's primarily due to the time commitment that may be involved at any given moment. You want to assign committee chairs and committee members to support those chairs. You also want the day of the event, volunteers are going to be especially critical. You want to keep tasks and due dates in your milestones realistic so that you don't overload or burn out your team. Keep in mind that when you're assigning committee chairs that they have some expertise, skill, or a strong interest in that area. And then, again, volunteers are going to be critical to you the day of the event. You want to communicate your time commitment and expectations early on to include time for committee meetings, calls, and times to execute the task. And then let your team know what's expected of them right from the beginning.
Great. That leads us to planning meetings and reviewing milestones and updated reports.
Well, it's extremely important to schedule regular meetings and calls. We recommend committees schedule meetings every other week, alternating between in-person and conference calls. As the conference gets closer, you'll be able to then decide whether you need to bump that up and maybe schedule more frequently occurring meetings or not. But be sure each committee knows what they should report on and where to pull that information. Things like registration reports and sponsored payment reports should be available through your registration system, plus review speaker confirmation and budget updates. Refer to your milestones to run your meeting. That's critical. It helps keep your meetings on track. It helps to ensure that everyone's on the same page and tasks are being completed. It also identifies any holdups that you might be having or any red flags. And then send reminders out to your committee chairs a few days prior to each meeting with the important supporting documents so that they're prepared as they go into the meeting. Even even for in-person meetings, we always include a conference call number for those who are not able to physically attend.
Okay, now let's talk about content. Junior, what about planning your conference schedule or agenda?
As they say, content is king. Go for a low risk in year one of your conference plan. You do not want to be too complicated. Don't be afraid to keep it simple, especially your first time out. Don't pack it all in. Keep in mind, networking time, breaks for the restroom, and breaks to check emails are a must, and you have to allow for this in the scheduling. Scheduling is key to the success of your conference. Time is key. You want to allow some additional time in your schedule, so that way in case you need to cut back or add time later on as time runs over, you'll be able to be a little bit more flexible with your conference planning. Plan for a minimum of 15 minutes in between sessions, but 20 to 30 minutes is even better. This will give folks, again, time to take those short breaks and make their way to the next session, so that way your next session starts on time. Allow for 45 minutes to an hour in the morning for registration. This will also allow for traffic. As we all know in Atlanta and many big cities, traffic can make or break anything, any meeting, any appointment. Allow time for traffic, networking, anything else. Be sure to ask the venue about your access time. When are you allowed and for setup, and how long do you have to break down following the event? This is especially true for audiovisual and staging setup. Most venues, especially hotels, tend to book evening events, so they may want to book an event on the evening before your conference. Any provider should expect to set up overnight and not on the day before. If you're able to set up the day before, that's a bonus, but you should not expect to be able to do so. This is a bit more logistics related, Sheila, but you should also pay close attention to what is contracted and writing with the venue. This is between venue contracts, any addendums, and also any email correspondences that may have gone back and forth. We'll also discuss this a little bit shortly, but again, this is all important to your content development and how it relates to your speakers and sponsorships and so on.
Okay, then how about scheduling your speakers?
So speaking of, confirming and managing your speakers is a big part of your conference planning. Conference attendance is often driven by who your speakers are. People want to see who they want to see. Lock in and promote speakers early on to help close sponsorships and sell those tickets. Another big key, do not tie sponsorship into speaking slots. These should be separate and kept separate. Any slides that you may show during the program or even the program printed, the printed program itself, those pages should be separate for speakers, speaker topics, and sponsor recognition. Make sure your topics and content are relevant with no sales pitches. Speaker information may be provided to the attendees in the introduction, the slides themselves, and the base pages of the program on your website. This really all depends on what you prefer to add and also the speaker's preference as well. Communicating with sponsors is another very important key to your conference coming together. You want to send your speaker packages with important information and dates to keep them well organized. Nothing worse than a speaker showing up to a conference on the wrong day because they just had it wrong in their calendar. You want to make sure you communicate very clearly where they need to be, when they need to be there, and who they need to touch base with upon arrival.
Good to know. Now let's move on to getting attendees in seats. Ken, how do we increase registration and keep track so that we know whether to panic or not when we're reviewing current registrations?
Well, the way you handle your attendee registration can prevent a ton of headaches down the line. Use a professional online registration system to be certain you collect your tickets prices in a way that's secure and easy for your attendees, and then it also needs to be reliable for you. Develop an expected number of attendees based on other events in the industry, your database size, and possible partnerships. Estimate conservatively, but keep the information on how you add more space and seats just in case you need it. Use incentives as a part of your marketing campaign, such as early bird pricing and a higher price at the door to encourage registration and payment. You can set up this through your registration systems most times. Be sure you have all of your programming in place before your early bird or your early deadline. Consider offering early bird discounts and a deadline, or with a deadline, and then extending it once for an additional push. Make the discounts worth it to your attendees. That's really important. It has to be important for them to register early. Sometimes, even with a great discount, they aren't ready to commit if your early bird deadline ends too soon.
Great. How about increasing attendance?
To increase attendance, I recommend bringing lots of friends and partner up. You can increase attendance by increasing your conference's exposure to more groups. Develop relationships with partners who may promote your conference with an agreement that you'll promote one of theirs, or you'll even offer their members discounts. Use your speakers and sponsors. You can use your speakers and sponsors themselves to help promote the event to their own groups as well, which is a great boon to your attendance. Use promotional codes to offer discounted pricing to special groups and members, or provide comp tickets to your speakers and sponsors. You should be able to set up a promotional code or a discount code with whatever registration system that you use.
Okay, Junia, what if we're a month out and nowhere near our goal for our number of attendees?
2 words: don't panic. Don't panic too early about event registration. Registration for local events happens in the last 2 weeks. If you're hosting a national or international event, a month out is a better guideline. Folks tend to plan a little bit further out, so that time frame does shift a bit. But keep in mind, people in local markets are known for signing up for events in the last 2 weeks. Again, don't panic. Be sure to keep a good history of reports from your registration so that you will have a good idea of how many attendees you should have registered and paid about 3 months out, 2 months out, 1 month, and 2 weeks out. This will be especially important as your conference grows year over year, and this will go into your year-over-year tracking. This will help you to plan for the future conferences, plan for future events, if you have an idea of when people are signing up for your event leading up to the event itself. And this will also help you set dates, as Kim mentioned, for early bird registration and those time frames in the registration cycle as well.
Okay, for now, keep benchmarks in mind. We ran the numbers on a recent history of conferences and found that the numbers of people who sign up early due to discounts, such as early bird pricing and promotional codes, will depend upon the regular price for your conference. So, as you can see in the chart we have here, this doesn't represent all of your registration, but a good chunk. 20% off high-ticket conference pricing through early bird pricing or other promotions can give you a large number of sign-ups at 2 months out. 20% off of a medium-ticket conference pricing through early bird and also promotional codes used in your registration system can bring more registrations at 2 weeks to 1 month out. Now, if you have a low-ticket conference price or complimentary pricing, this will likely have the effect of filling registration in the last week prior to the conference. Again, this is not all of them, but a large portion. So if you have early bird price promotion and only have 10 signed up at 3 months out, this may not be anything to panic over. It would be wonderful for our planning if people would register earlier, but keeping benchmark data from other conferences in mind will hopefully help you not to panic, but of course, do keep securing good speakers and promoting that conference. Okay, let's move on to developing your budget and raising funds. Junia, how do we keep an eye on the numbers?
Okay, so you'll want to draft the budget after doing some initial research on your high-cost items. These will be items such as your venue, food and beverage, audiovisual, and also your event management help. You'll need to determine your must-haves and separate out your wants or your nice-to-have. When you're negotiating with possible venues, ask about the cost of food and beverages, audiovisual, parking, internet, especially internet. And this is for internet for your conference room if you have a main session, if you also have breakouts, all these will need to be considered. And then any other items that would be considered the higher end. Insider knowledge. Most venues will allow you to use outside audiovisual. So you'll want to ask about bringing in your own audiovisual and any other vendors. Depending on the size of your event, your savings could be in the tens of thousands when bringing in outside AV. We've seen this time and time again, where some venues may charge a fee for you to do so, but typically the amount you save far outweighs this fee. The in-house AV, and nothing against in-house AV companies, the in-house AV does tend to be significantly higher than what you can negotiate with outside AV companies. And Sheila, just wanted to add in another note about the AV. It's also a great idea to get bids from multiple AV companies. This way you can do a comparison and see what the going rate is. You may have one AV company that may come in $10,000 higher, $20,000 higher than another AV company, and you may have two others that are more comfortable for the lower rate. So this way you have a better idea of what the industry is really charging for these services. Does your conference room include free internet? This is not your room you may be staying in. This is the actual room you'll be holding your session, and this also includes all the event spaces for your conference. If you have breakouts, if you have maybe speaker prep rooms, what are the internet inclusions in your contract? And also, it may not necessarily be free internet, but just make sure you find out what's included and what you will have to pay for separately. Talking about cost, of course, so it's still very important. We also want to make sure that you don't let any of these costs become a gotcha. Pay very close attention to contracts, agreements, and anything else in writing, especially email communications. As we all know, just because someone said something to you verbally does not mean it holds water. You need to make sure you have things in writing and that you're paying attention to what is in writing, both what you receive in writing and what you say in writing. If you'll be using in-house catering, there should be a preliminary review of the venue's menus before you book with the venue. This way, you'll be sure that the pricing for the food and beverage is in line with your budget and also in line with your taste. Keep track of income using your attendee registration and sponsor payment report. Another note, we're talking about internet still. This is 2014. We all know we need access to the internet at all times. Think of it back when hotels used to receive a lot of revenue from telephone usage. With everyone using their cell phones, that telephone revenue has pretty much disappeared. So they're now compensating for that lost telephone revenue with now the internet revenue. So that's why we keep stressing the importance of keeping in mind the internet costs, because those can become very costly and they can become a gotcha if you're not being careful.
Great. How about using your conference budget to decide on your pricing?
So, of course, pricing is very important. You'll need to determine your break-even point by adding up your fixed costs, such as venue and the other items that I just discussed, and also your variable costs. This can be cost per plate for meals that will increase based on the number of your attendees. This will give you the lowest discounted rate you should be able to offer, and you can go up from there. So this will affect maybe the early bird pricing. This can affect some of the, as Ken was talking about earlier, the partner pricing. You may offer promotional codes and discounts to partners and sponsors. This will affect what you set those pricing to be. You don't want to set your pricing too low, and now you're operating at a loss. That's never something anyone wants to do.
Okay. Something that will greatly help to increase your conference revenue is sponsorships. Ken, let's go over how our folks listening today can add or increase sponsorships for their conference.
Okay. Well, it's important to develop a pipeline of potential sponsors. Their contact information, the level of sponsorship that you've discussed with them or they've committed to should all be recorded in a living document that will be used for future conferences. Keep in mind that a successful conference makes it easier to get commitments from sponsors for the future. Consider the costs and benefits of adding a VIP break or breakfast, dinner, receptions, where sponsors can receive additional benefits. For your first conference, you don't want to get too complicated, but you do want to have some benefit added for your sponsorships, which will help you gain sponsorships in the future. A lot of times you can add these as free events in your registration system that you send only to your VIPs. APG considers sponsors our job security in the conference world, and happy sponsors usually return, so make sure that your sponsorship fulfillment is 100%. Develop a sponsor package with sponsor levels, their benefits, with the cost, any expectations for in-kind sponsors, and important dates. Plus, what sponsors should send to help promote, such as logos, etc. Keep a tracking document to make sure that it's easy to keep track of your sponsors from year to year, and it'll help not only for your first conference, but it'll help you set up your any future conferences that you might be having.
Good. Now, for those of you who stayed on the line, we have bonus content. Just a high-level overview of marketing. Junior, we need to market our conference.
Right. So we can't get people there, we can't get attendees there if no one knows the conference is happening. So, of course, we have to market it. There are a number of different ways to approach the marketing, but the overall goal is to increase exposure for your conference. First, you need to identify who will take the lead. As Ken mentioned earlier, you may have folks on your committee who may be involved with marketing. So your marketing committee chair, a member of your board, a member of your staff may already be a marketing professional. So keep this in mind. This is also a task you may have to hire an individual or a small firm to handle for you. Or even one of your annual sponsors. If you're an organization, you may have an annual sponsor who is already a marketing company. That may be a great resource to turn to. Or even one of your conference sponsors may also be a marketing sponsor. You want to develop your email database. A rough guideline is to have at least 1,000 good contacts on your database for every 50 conference dates you want to fill. Make it super simple for folks to sign up for conference updates with an easy link. Something such as a subscribe to mailing list link that will go on your website. You can also share it in your e-blast and also throughout social media. Develop an email schedule with specific focus for each blast. These can be blast specific, such as a save the date. Another blast can be the speakers are now announced. If you have a big name speaker that is newly announced, that can sometimes be its own announcement as well. You may want to, you would highly suggest that you announce when sponsorship opportunities are available. This way, you may have folks who are part of your email database who could be great sponsorship candidates. So you want to let them know the sponsorship opportunities are now available for them to sign up for. And, of course, include a link as to either who they will email or how they can find out more information about what those sponsorship levels are. You'll want another email blast talking about the actual topics and description. This is the programming content, also very key, and is also a great driver of attendance. Your pre-event attendance details, and, of course, others as needed. A strong social media presence can go a long way. Ask your sponsors, speakers, and committees to post as well and provide them with the post. This will make it, again, Sheila, as we said a second ago, make it easy for folks, to make it simple. Provide them with a hashtag specific for your event. Provide pre-written tweets and posts. Hand it over to them and have them become your mouthpieces to push and promote. And this will also help you promote the sponsors themselves, the speakers, and your partners. When they see that you're tweeting and you're talking about them, they'll in turn will be more apt to post about the event as well.
Thanks, Junia. Now we're going to move on to the question and answer part. Be sure you've entered your questions. I did promise at the beginning that we would let you know how you could find out more. Remember that 123 Sign-Up will send you a follow-up email with the webinar replay, a copy of the slides with extra notes from our conversation today, and contact information. If you sent in a question for the Q&A section, and you can still do that now, we will be able to answer a few here, but you will also receive an email with your question personally answered. You may contact Associated Planners of Georgia at 770-381-9616. You can see here on the slide on your presentation, or email susan@proapg.com to ask further questions about this webinar. Plus, they are ready to provide event consulting or management services depending on your needs. Now, for me, if you have questions on measuring your attendee history, tracking the sources of your registrations, or more ways to bring your various business data sources together, give me a call at 404-931-4395 or email me at sheila@insightanalytique.com. Again, this information is on the slides you can see on your presentation, as well as in the downloads that will be provided to you from 123 Sign Up. Now, let's go to the question and answers. And again, go ahead and send those through. Okay. We have Donna from New York. She asks, do you recommend only one person, a main coordinator, be the master, editor, keeper of the milestone spreadsheet, or do you typically have the spreadsheet somewhere where the conference team can collectively update the documents, such as Google Docs?
Oh, wow. This is a great question, and this is something that we see for, I think, all of our clients. It's one for another, and it also relates to other documents as well. So who should be the keeper of the master milestone? You should always have one person who is the keeper of the milestones. This person can change, but there needs to be very clear communication as to who is the keeper. So, for instance, if I'm making edits to the milestones, I'm making changes, make it known to Sheila and Ken and to anyone else, I am now the keeper of the milestones. Once I'm done with it, if Sheila then needs to make changes, I will turn over the keeper position to Sheila. Sheila is now the keeper, communicates that with everyone. So unless you claim to be the keeper of the milestones, do not make changes, because there have been issues where, unfortunately, information is not transferred from one version of the milestone to the next. And this can also be an issue when it comes to your sponsorship tracking documents and any other document, a program agenda, for instance. If you have more than one person working on programming, that can also be an issue where you have a keeper of the master conflict.
And if something's not applicable, someone may inadvertently delete something that you'll want there for future use.
And as you saw in the milestone slide, you can just have a note in the milestone that say NA, not applicable. That way it remains there for the future, so that way the task is not forgotten about in the next year, but no one's working on that task specifically.
Okay. Next question from Alyssa from Pittsburgh. How early is too early to have an early bird deadline? If most people do the early bird, isn't that the actual price to set income on?
Well, you want 1 week to 10 days out, and keep in mind, keeping in mind your budget and how many discounts and comps that you may have as well. You want to take all that into consideration. If you happen to be comping your speakers and your sponsors, that can be a reduction in your revenue. So you want to be able to control that. We've also found that if you do it too far out in advance, that can have a negative impact as well, where people won't register because they think, well, I've got plenty of time.
And let me add to that, as far as a clarification on the chart that we had about the early bird and promotional codes, this wouldn't be most of your registration. This would be a good chunk. So the representation was, if it's a high-priced conference ticket and you have an early bird of at least 20%, that you can get a good chunk of folks to register at 2 months out, but that's not everyone. You could also use some things like it's a deadline, or you could use a top, the first 100 to sign up for this early bird, and then it will go away. You could use different things like that if you're worried about how many people. But usually that's not the problem. The next question from Krista: how far in advance should I open my registration? When should I close it?
Krista, great question. You should open your registration as soon as possible, but at least 2 to 3 months out. Not everyone is going to necessarily sign up that far out, but it's always helpful to have your registration out, open that early, and you don't want to necessarily close it until maybe 24 to 48 hours prior to the event. But you also want to make sure that you're noting the door price online. You don't want people to think that because registration online has closed that they can no longer attend the conference. You still want to get them to come to the door. So go ahead and let them know on the website, online registration is closed, but you may still register on-site for X price.
Yeah, the farther out that you open it up, the easier it is for them to put it to save the date for the event.
Okay. Now for Megan, I'm struggling to get speakers for my conference. Do you have any suggestions on where I should look for speakers on a budget?
Start with your committee. Your committee is a great resource for many things, especially speakers. Your committee can then ask those who they may know who are interested. They may have clients, people they work with, friends, folks in their network who may be ideal speakers for you. You also want to start a pipeline for your speakers and assign a liaison to do that task. Avoid not making contact with committee members. This is something, again, your committee members are key to everything that you need for everything from speakers and sponsors and everything else.
Okay. Now, another question. Get some examples of some budget gotchas.
Budget gotchas. Okay. How much do you normally pay for a can of Coke? Maybe at most $1 from a vending machine, $1.25. Coke can cost $4.50 plus. And that plus means plus tax. That means plus service fees. Service fees can range anywhere from 20% to 30%. Your sales tax, of course, here in Georgia will depend on where you are locally. But you also have to keep in mind those are some things that could be a gotcha. Box lunches, those can be anywhere from $32 up to $42 for a box lunch, and this will include a sandwich, cookie, maybe some chips, and maybe a drink. And again, you also have to keep in mind the plus, the plus service fees and plus sales tax. We talked about this a bit, right, Ken? The AV, audiovisual, can always be a gotcha. So paying very close attention to what you have contracted, what you've requested from the AV companies, and what you're getting. Usually a projector is preferred. A projector isn't always needed. So communicating with your speakers to confirm what their presentation is going to be. If the speaker has no intentions of using a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation, you may be able to save funds on maybe even a breakout of your entire session of lessening either using a smaller projector package or no projector package at all. It really all depends. Another one may be rooms, so sleeping rooms on your master bill for maybe speakers or even sponsors. You want to make sure that when you book these rooms, if you're covering the room and taxes, you're only covering room and taxes, no incidentals. They need to put their own credit card down with the hotel for those incidentals. You don't want to pay for someone throwing a party in their suite and you're covering those costs. So that's another big gotcha.
Okay. Another question from Donna. Did I hear correctly? Is the industry standard general rule 1,000 contacts to yield 50 attendees? That is quite a reality check and a great benchmark for the marketing email list. Let me say quickly, and then I'll have Junia and Kim answer, that's not an industry standard. That's more of what we've seen over the years in the numbers. For the first time, I would say, yes, go with that. And then from there, you can look at your history and measure. But Ken and Junia, do you have some ideas on what folks could do if they have a smaller database?
Again, reaching out to your contacts, really using your sponsors, your speakers, your committee members as mouthpieces for your conference. You may have a small database, but they may have a large database. And also LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a resource that isn't always utilized, but it's a great resource. People sometimes have thousands of contacts on LinkedIn. And by making a simple post, that in itself extends your reach. And usually you're targeting folks who are in the area that your content covers anyway.
Yep, social media and for sure partnering up. You may not have a large database, but your partners certainly may.
Great. Now, I think that we are close to the end of our time. There is one more question. We have time for one more question. What's the question?
How to motivate more company to sponsor.
Okay, how do we motivate more companies to promote the conference, to sponsor the conference?
So that sounds like more so recruiting sponsors. How are you recruiting sponsors? You can actually look at other events that may be similar to your event and content, similar in size. That may be a great source to look for leads for folks who may sponsor your conference, not just locally, but also beyond the local market. This is also important. Ask the sponsor, the potential sponsor, what do they want? You may be able to adjust your sponsor package to better suit their needs. Again, as I said earlier at the beginning of this presentation, is you have to be flexible. You have to be able to adjust here and there. As we said, sponsors are what gets this conference going. Also get help from your committee chairs. And also if you have a board, a lot of board members are very well connected. So make sure you're reaching out to boards if you have an advisory board. If you have mentors, reach out to every single contact you possibly have as a resource for your sponsors.
Yeah, I think looking at other typical sponsors is a big one. There may be people that are out there sponsoring events that are similar to yours that you might not even have thought of. So it's a good research tool to get out there and see who's out there sponsoring similar events.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. And if you do have a question that we weren't able to get to today, we will be emailing you and just following up with you on that. You also can reach out to us if you continue to have questions or if you review the materials. Remember that 123 Sign Up will send you the downloads and the recording, and that will have some notes from the webinar as well as the slides. So we do look forward to hearing from you in the future. A final thought, Ken or Junia, a final thought for everyone.
Sure. I would definitely say, and I know I just mentioned this a short while ago, but flexibility. You want to stay focused while remaining flexible. Like anything else in life, things can change in an instant, and you may need to be flexible enough to roll with the punches. As long as you have a solid plan in place, from your milestones to your programming agenda, with a solid plan in place, you can better manage these things that take you by surprise, good or bad. Remain flexible.
And I think Ken had said, don't sweat the small stuff, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I agree with Junia. In the hotel and hospitality business, we call it learn to tuck and roll. Sometimes you've got to be able to do that. And keep in mind that don't sweat the small stuff because it still may come off well. You know what it should look like. Your attendees don't. And to them, it's something that could look perfect to them, whereas you having an idea of how you wanted it, and it may not have come off as well, or there might have been a minor glitch, your attendees won't even see it. So don't sweat the small stuff.
Thank you. Now we'll turn it back over to Krista.
Yes, great. Thank you, Ken, Junia, and Sheila for joining us and sharing your valuable insights. And thank you to all of our guests for tuning in and joining us. As Sheila mentioned, we'll be sending you all a follow-up email with a link to the webinar recording, as well as a PDF of the slides that were shown if you're interested in sharing it or watching it again. The presenters have also put together some more in-depth notes on the topics that they've covered, so you'll get a copy of that, and also a free ebook from 123 Sign Up titled Building Your Membership as a gift for attending. We have more webinars planned, so stay tuned, and in the meanwhile, feel free to get in contact with us with any feedback or questions. If you are looking for affordable event registration software, looking to save time on your event registration and management, please visit us at www.123signup.com. Have a great day, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, everyone.